طيب, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. So we started talking last time about 802.11e, and we said that 802.11e has two major objectives. One is to provide service differentiation, and we talked about the traffic categories, which can provide service differentiation. The other objective is to provide a quality of service guarantees or deterministic guarantees. And for that, we mentioned the fact that we need traffic streams and we need traffic stream specs, which is what we call T-spec. And based on the T-spec, we need some signaling mechanism to exchange the requirements of the nodes, okay, between the nodes and the access point. And then the access point in the HCF mode, which is the hyper-coordination function mode, can use this information to control the polling sequence, okay, or the polling order, and the duration where each node is polled. Through this mechanism, and because of the fact that HCF is collision-free, we can provide some predictable guarantees and deterministic quality of service, right? So that's, in a nutshell, what the 802.11e tries to provide. And the mechanism for this is for EDCF, or the Enhanced Distributed Coordination Function. We talked about the fact that we can provide some service differentiation through providing different arbitrary interframe spacing. Okay, so one parameter we can control is the amount of wait time that each node can wait before it tries to access the channel. And the shorter this AIFS is, the higher the priority of this node trying to access the medium. So each traffic category will have certain AIFS. Okay, so traffic category 1 will have the longest AIFS, right? Traffic category 2 will have less IFS. Traffic category 3 will have even less AIFS, and so on and so forth, right? Another parameter, we said that if a node tries to access the medium and the medium is busy, then this node will try to go into a back-off procedure. The back-off procedure is characterized by two parameters. One is the contention window, and the other one is what we call persistent factor. So the contention window is the window within which I generate a random number, okay, and based on this random number, I decide to wait before I try to sense the channel again to see if the channel is idle, okay? So again, if we generate a random number, and this random number happens to be shorter for one node versus the other, this node will gain access to the medium before the other node. So, but as we said before, if this number is random, then this on its own does not provide service differentiation, right? Because if the number is random, on the average, if I generate a random number more than the number that you generate, chances are next time it will be the other way around. Because the random number tries to be even across a long time horizon, right? So that on its own does not provide service differentiation. What provides the service differentiation here is the size of the contention window that we can use to generate this random number. So if I generate a random number from 0 to, let's say, 10, and you generate a random number between 0 and 100, then who has higher priority on average? 0 to 10 will have higher priority. Same thing. 0 to 10 on the average will wait for less time compared from 0 to 100. Because if I generate a random number repeatedly, but all these numbers are within 0 to 10, but you generate a random number between 0 and 100, so chances are, I will, on the average, I will gain access to the channel more often than you, right? So that makes sense. So it's not the randomness that will provide the service differentiation, it's the size of the contention window. So that's the second parameter that we can control. So each traffic category will have separate or different AIFS and will have a different contention window size, right? The third parameter here is what we call persistence factor. Persistence factor here gets used when you encounter or when you go through exponential back off when you try to send and there is an error. So, as we said before, just the fact that we provide collision avoidance, it doesn't mean that we eliminate the collision. So collision may still happen, right? So if after using all these precautions, I start to send and there is a collision, okay? Then we go through back off, right? So we have to generate a random number within the contention window. So what the persistence factor here provides is that if there is an error, okay, whether we go through a back off or exponential back off. What is the difference? Exponential back off tries to double the contention window every time there is an error. That's why it's called exponential back off. So if there is an error, then we double the contention window. So it becomes 2. Okay? If there is another error, it becomes 4. If there is another error, it becomes 8. And then 16. So that's why it's exponential. That's why we call it exponential back off. So this is persistence factor of 2. So what is PF1? PF1 does not go through exponential back off. So if there is an error, keep using the same contention window. So wouldn't that provide some priority scheme? It does, right? So the persistence factor is a third parameter. If you have a persistence factor of 1, this means that you have higher priority because you don't double the contention window every time there is an error. It's like you're more persistent into trying to access the channel. That's what that means. Okay, so you're more persistent. So if there is an error, don't double the contention window. Try to generate a random number using the same contention window. If you are PF of 2, then before you generate the random number, double the contention window first. Every time you have to double. So if there is an error, double. If there is another error, double, and so on. Okay? So these are the 3 main parameters that characterize the traffic category in 802.11e. So 802.11 itself does not deal with these parameters in any way, shape, or form. So you have DIFS, and that's it. And all the stations, they go through DIFS. That's it. And the same contention window. So there is no service differentiation. Okay? Any question? Okay. So these are the parameters mainly. So what does this imply in terms of the channel access mechanism and the queuing mechanism? Well, what happens now is that the interstation packet scheduling here, it's an implicit priority-based queue. Okay? So, because now, it's as if each node that uses a particular traffic stream, it's as if it's in a separate logical queue. Okay? And based on the 3 parameters that we have, AIFS, contention window, and persistence factor, this queue gets served with a higher priority. If there's nothing in this queue, then we go to the next queue, which means that this will have the highest priority in accessing the channel, and then the next queue, and then the next queue, and then the next queue. That's different from weighted fair queuing, right? So this is a priority-based queue. It's not a weighted fair queue in that case. Because always AIFS, the shortest, will be the highest priority. Always. In weighted fair queuing, it's based on a weight. Here there's no weight in a way. Okay? And of course the channel access mechanism is SysMCA. Still collision based. It's still collision based channel access mechanism. But using this AIFS, contention window, and persistent factor provides some kind of a logical priority-based queuing. This is the interstation packet scheduling. Okay? Clear? Okay. Still, in that case, the legacy station will be in a separate logical queue. This is the one that uses DIFS. The legacy stations are the one that use 802.11 without the E. So these will still wait for DIFS, and depending on this DIFS, how is it mapped to the different AIFSs, then these legacy stations will take the lowest priority. Okay, so it's as if these legacy stations will have a separate logical queue. All right, so we talked about the contention or contention-free period repetition interval, and we said that we have HCF, okay, in the contention-free period, and in the contention period we still have some irregular and infrequent kind of HCF periods even inside the contention period duration, right? So we said that last time. So how does this work? Well, of course, in this duration, again, the access point will send a beacon to announce the start of a new contention-free period. And then, in the first part, which is the HCF, again, the access point, or not exactly the access point, the logical hybrid coordinator, which runs inside the access point, right? This HC, the coordinator, will send a pull, contention-free pull message. In this pull message, it announces the node that should send. When I send a pull, I give this node what we call traffic opportunity. Okay? So here, I will announce the node that should utilize this traffic opportunity and send a packet with maximum duration of traffic opportunity. Okay? So all the nodes will look for the address in this pull message, okay? And then only the node that will match the address will send during this traffic opportunity, right? And then after this traffic opportunity, the hybrid coordinator can send or will have to send another pull to pull another node, and maybe this node will send more than one traffic opportunity, 1 or 2 or 3. So I can then control how many times a specific node can send. Based on this simple pulling mechanism, I can control exactly the amount of delay, the amount of throughput, the priority for each node. So that's easy. Then, when the end of this period comes, then after that, we will have the contention period. In the contention period, we'll go through the normal SYSMA CA with the arbitrary interframe spacing, and based on that, different nodes will gain. So these traffic opportunities now are up for grabs, right? These are not assigned to a specific node. The nodes will now contend. They will compete to gain these traffic opportunities, right? At the same time, the hybrid coordinator will contend in this period, will contend to gain access to a traffic opportunity using pulling. So this pull will be sent during the contention period, okay, using PIFS. Remember, we said that we have DIFS and we have PIFS. PIFS here is the PCF interframe spacing. And we said that this is usually less than DIFS, which means that during this contention, the hybrid coordinator will have higher priority to send a pull message to gain access to the median for 1 or 2 traffic opportunities during the contention period. So what this implies is that once I gain the hybrid coordinator contends and sends this pull message using PIFS, the hybrid coordinator technically now has seized access to the channel. What will happen now? All stations will go into nav, okay? Except the one that's being pulled. Okay? Remember here there's no nav. There's no need for nav. everyone is waiting for the pull. I don't have to nav. I don't have to go into it. But here, well, I'm like everyone. I contend on the channel. So if I have a traffic, I will contend on the channel. Unless I hear that someone else is seizing access to the channel, in which case I will go into nav. And that's what happens when the Hyperrate coordinator will send a pull. And the pull here uses contention. The pull here contends with all the other nodes, but using PIFS. And because PIFS is relatively less than DIFS, so this is technically means that the Hyperrate coordinator will have higher priority to send these pull messages during the contention period.
So because the window is smaller, this the quality of service call and the traffic period together like in hybrid contention free. Like this part.
Yes. Yes. So we call this this is like somewhere in the middle. It's not like totally contention based, and it's not totally contention free, right? We call this controlled contention. Controlled contention. Okay? So during this period, the Hyperrate coordinator, if it successfully seizes access to the channel, it will inform everyone to go into nav, and only the node that's pulled will gain this traffic opportunity to send in a collision-free environment. Okay? And then we'll go back to normal. We'll go back to traffic opportunities, which are, again, up for grabs, and everyone contends on it, and so on. Okay? So the Hyperrate coordinator will then, or can then, control the bandwidth or the throughput from each node by controlling the allocation of these traffic opportunities. Okay? But of course, in order for me to allocate these traffic opportunities, what do I need before this? لا يعني ماشي. I send a pull. The pull signal will ask a certain node to send. Okay? What is the prerequisite of this? I need to know the requirements of this node, right? Because first I have to collect information based on which I can allocate these traffic opportunities. It's not like I allocate them randomly. So if it's random, again, it's fair, and there's no point of guaranteed quality of service and differentiated services and so on. But here, I allocate the traffic opportunities based on the demands of the nodes, right? So first I have to know the demands of the node, right? So that's what the signaling will allow me to do. So first, the nodes will send their demands, okay? And then, based on that, I can go into this. Okay, I can go into this scheduling, whether I need pulling, what is the duration of this period versus this period, how these traffic opportunities get allocated to different nodes, and so on and so forth. Okay? So the signaling is a very important thing that have to be there. So this is the architecture for the HCF. HCF uses this architecture. So basically the traffic, there is a traffic stream classification based on what? Based on the T-spec. So first, the nodes will send a signaling message, which is here. So this signaling message will inform the Hyperrate coordinator about the demands of these nodes. And this, as we will see later, this signaling will contain information about the traffic stream. And this takes two possible formats. We'll talk about them in the next slide. But this information will give me some statistics about the requirements of this node, whether it needs specific average delay, maximum delay, minimum throughput, statistical delay, something like that. So this signaling message will inform the Hyperrate coordinator about the demands of all these nodes. Based on that, the Hyperrate coordinator will get all this information and then will perform a scheduling mechanism. This scheduling mechanism can use by optimization, can use different techniques. And by the way, this is not part of the standard. So the standard gives you the way to provide the quality of service and leaves the actual algorithm to different vendors to implement whatever they want. And this is actually, this part, it what distinguishes, مثلا, for example, يعني, D-Link access points versus Cisco access points. So why we as consumers, we have more confidence about D-Link مثلا access points more than Cisco access points. Why? Because it gives us more performance. Okay? Well, both of them, they conform to the standard. And they have to work together. In which case, there is interoperability between these access points. So at home, you can have a D-Link access point and a Cisco wireless router and another, I don't know, gear access point or something. And they all work together, right? But throughout the time, people will have more confidence about certain events. Why? Because of this, the things that are not part of the standard, okay, you can use your innovation. So you can innovate in that part. So what we're saying here is that we will gather the demands of the nodes through QoS signaling. And then from this information, we can design our own algorithm to assign these traffic opportunities. But we didn't say how, right? Whatever the algorithm you use, you will still conform with the standard. What is the standard? The standard is the fact that you have beacon, the fact that you have a pull message, and this is the format. That's what the protocol defines. But how do you assign or allocate these traffic opportunities? Up to you. That's not part of the standard. Okay. Okay.
So if the algorithm on a certain hypercoordinator could be better for certain standard than other standard. The same algorithm, the same, for example, access point. The algorithm that it's used, maybe it will give more performance for.
Yes, that's the whole point. That's the whole point. Yes, it will give better performance depending on how you define the performance. Maybe the performance you define it by the fact that the nodes that with higher priority will have better, مثلا average delay. It depends on how you define that performance. You have matrix, you have some matrix based on which you define this performance is better than this, right? So this is what you have in the project and in assignments pretty much. So that's what we're trying to learn, is that first we have to define how we evaluate the performance through a certain matrix. And based on these matrix, we say that this algorithm is better than this for this particular matrix. Maybe it's better in one matrix, but worse in another matrix, right? So that's what this is. So the actual algorithm is not part of the standards. So this is the main message here. But this is the architecture. Remember, so for HCF, okay, we have traffic streams. For EDCF, we have traffic categories. So EDCF provides per class quality of service behavior, right? And it provides service differentiation, but not a guaranteed quality of service. I cannot provide guaranteed quality of service because it's per class. So group of traffic streams will have the same behavior. I cannot distinguish between them because they all get assigned to the same traffic category. But here, I deal with each traffic stream individually. I can. In which case, each traffic stream can be logically in one queue, and I can provide predictable behavior to this particular traffic stream. So this is a per flow behavior, right? All right, so the last thing, so how do we send the signaling? How do the nodes send the signals to the hybrid coordination, and in what format? Okay, so those are the two questions. How, that's easy. So In the contention-free period interval, using HTF, what happens is that, again, the QoS sends the signal message during the contention-free period interval through HCF polling process. So during HCF, we use, again, polling process. So when I allow a certain node to send, first the node will send me its own demand. Then based on this can have round robin. This can go into round robin because I don't need to provide any service differentiation to know the information of the nodes, right? So this can use round robin, okay? Once I know the demands, then I can allocate the traffic opportunities and then I can do polling using any polling sequence, which does not have to be round robin in that case. Because round robin is ultimately fair, is equal. So to pull nodes to get their signaling or to get their traffic information, I don't need to provide any service differentiation, right? But once I know the information, now I can provide service differentiation. So in HTF, we use برضو polling. In EDCF, we send the signals using contention. So the nodes will contend to send their own signals, not necessarily using AIFS. So in that case, they can contend using DIFS normally. Okay? Because again, when they perform contention to send their traffic information, we don't need to provide any service differentiation for this. So they all send through DIFS. They contend equally on the chip. And there is the third mode, which what we have mentioned is that we are trying to send HTF in a contention-based period, which is what we call the controlled contention, right? So in the controlled contention period, the stations will send the signal message during the contention, the controlled contention period using PIFS. Okay? So there are three ways of sending the signals from the nodes. In HCF, we use normal polling. So we wait for the polling signal from the HC, and then we send our demands. For EDCF, we use DIFS, and for controlled contention, we use PIFS. Okay? Controlled contention, again, this is the HCF period inside the contention period, right? All right, so what format? We have two formats. One of them we mentioned before, which is the T-spec. T-spec mentions the demands in terms of average delay and so on and so forth. Average delay, average throughput, maximum delay, maximum throughput, something like that. Okay, so I give values, what are my requirements. So based on that, HC will allocate the traffic opportunities. Okay, so that's one format, which is the T-spec. There is another way of sending the traffic demand based on the Q state indicator. What does this mean? This means that each node maintains an internal queue, right? What if this queue is empty? What does this indicate? This indicates that the node is not actually sending huge amount of traffic. Okay? So a very simple way of expressing your requirements is just by sending the state of that queue. If this queue is empty, you send to the hybrid coordinator saying that the queue is empty. The hybrid coordinator will interpret this as very low requirements from this node. If the queue is really full, okay, this means that I have huge amount of traffic and it's better for me to send it immediately, right? So in that case, the hyper coordinator will interpret this as high requirements, which means that if the queue is full, give this node more traffic opportunities. Otherwise, the queue will be full and this node will start dropping packets. Okay? So it's an implicit way of expressing your requirements. However, it may not be the most accurate because it doesn't take into consideration the actual quality of service requirements. It takes into consideration the current state in terms of how much traffic you have.
Which makes sense.
But it does not say whether this is video, this is audio, it doesn't say anything. Okay? The T-spec might be more accurate in terms of I can express some packet drops. So, well, if you have to drop packets, this is the allowable percentage of traffic that can be dropped from this stream, for example. But the queue state does not tell you that. The queue state will tell you whether I have more packets in the queue or I have less packets in the queue. In which case, if I have more packets in the queue, you better give me more traffic opportunities to serve these packets. If I have less packets in the queue, you don't have to give me or to grant me any traffic opportunities at this point because the amount of traffic that I have is low. So queue state indicator is easier for the HC to basically provide traffic opportunities proportional to the length of the queue. So I can use the queue length as if it's a weight for how many traffic opportunities I give to this node versus this node versus this node. And roughly speaking. But it does not necessarily describe accurately the actual quality of service demands of the nodes. Okay. Any question? So I think this is the end of this chapter. So the wireless LANs or 802.11e is an example of standards that use contention-based technique. And even though contention is something random that we cannot control, but we have seen some mechanisms and some algorithms that will allow us to provide some service differentiation. Maybe not predictable quality service, but some service differentiation. So starting from next time, we will forget totally about contention-based channel access mechanisms. So we have different, in wireless metropolitan area networks like WiMAX and cellular networks, we don't use contention-based techniques. We use TDMA and FDMA, okay? Which means that we forget about collision. Everything is controlled. So now, how do we provide quality of service? Again, from what we have discussed so far, it looks like it's going to be easier, all right? So we can have more control and we can have better mechanisms to allocate the wireless channel resources in a more efficient way. Okay? But how does this work? We'll talk about it next time.